Automation 101, building your first workflow with Adobe Acrobat and Acrobat Sign. It's now my pleasure to turn the floor over to your first presenter, Mike Priesement, Senior Manager, Education, Product Marketing. Mike, you have the floor.
Great. Thank you so much, Phil. And thank you everybody for joining us today. We have a really exciting topic, document automation today. Before getting into that, a little bit of additional kind of housekeeping, just a quick preview of what's going to be covered today, some other kind of setup slides before we get into a really cool demo that my colleague Serge will do for us. So obviously today, December 15th, all about document automation, where we're going to be talking about how can you streamline your document-based workflows within your institution using tools like Acrobat Sign that incorporate e-signatures and a lot of other cool automations in there. And really specific to that is how it integrates with Microsoft tools as well to really enhance that automation. And then we're going to take a little bit of a break as we go through the end of year holidays, and then we're coming back January 26th. Kind of continue this trend of talking about how you can use Acrobat Sign for additional workflows you might want to incorporate into your institution. And then as we move into the year, talking more around how can you do more types of things with PDF specifically. So not only the e-signature component, just what are the capabilities of PDFs and what are some of the more advanced things beyond what you probably are already thinking of in terms of like editing a PDF or exporting. There's a lot of cool workflows as well that you can really introduce into your institution to get some really nice efficiencies. And now before we start the actual session, just a quick poll. We like to learn who's in the audience today. What is your role? What did you sign up for? So we'll spend about a minute here just kind of give everyone a chance to submit their answers. And I see the responses come in immediately and right off the bat, just like we usually see. A good chunk are coming from the IT department. Obviously, you are the boots on the ground to implement this kind of technology and make sure everything runs smoothly. So always exciting that we have a pretty high representation from IT to hopefully give you the knowledge and the insight into how is this technology going to help your institution. So glad that we have a lot of IT. So we have some folks from finance and HR and procurement. We have seen procurement approving these types of purchases. So hopefully you'll learn also a little bit about how document automation is going to be really beneficial for the education institution. And then we also have some leadership, so that's great. Okay, thank you everybody so much for filling that stuff out here. That just kind of helps us kind of fine tune the content and what you're looking for. So I see a lot of just general knowledge, so that's great. That is hopefully what we're going to get to you today. So before going into the actual demo, because I know that's really probably the main reason a lot of you joined today's session, to really see how does this actually work. Just a little bit about why Adobe cares about this space. What is our mission in education? Obviously, whether you're in IT, procurement, HR, you still do work for an educational institution, which means you obviously care about solving a lot of these challenges that the education market has. You want to make sure the students are successful. Everything obviously in education is all about the students. So whether you're implementing document technology or whatever it is, the end goal is always going to be around making sure that your institution, whether it's a K through 12 school, district, or college or university, is making sure your students are successful. So we also care about making sure that we're giving you the tools, capabilities, and support so that we students get better grades, they have more engagement with learning material, they're better prepared for careers, and overall your institution is more successful. So whether that means you're cutting costs, you're saving time on doing kind of really meaningless tasks when your time is better served in other areas. So that's really what we're looking to help you solve together. And when we think of how does Adobe approach those different problems, it's really about providing tools that are essential for driving success, whether it's success for a student or for the institution, in the classroom, beyond the classroom, and then technology and things for just the institution itself, which is really the bulk of today's topic of when you're thinking of document automation. That's really about making the institution more successful. And then we think about how do we help the institution become more successful, and that's really through digital transformation, or in other words, really going paperless. Because when you think of digital transformation, there's three main priorities. And when we've surveyed quite a few IT leadership in the education space, these are some insights that we got from you all, that you look at digital transformation in three areas, which is classroom technology. We're not talking about classroom technology here. That's definitely not our area of expertise. We're more around the leftmost column here, digitization of the types of workflows and documents. So converting paper forms to digital, automating manual processes to workflows. Obviously, workflow is probably the word you're going to hear from us the most today, workflows, and then moving wet signatures to e-signatures. In the middle here, transforming your data systems. So whether it's an SIS implementation, an LMS implementation, or just overall looking at your data and analytics systems, these are of course also really big transformation priorities. But a lot of times it's that leftmost bucket that is the easiest starting point, and there's a lot of ways you can add improvements to it that give you really nice efficiencies. Really, that's all about going paperless. And going paperless, it's a lot broader than just saying, hey, I'm not going to have any physical pieces of paper. I'm going to instead have PDFs. When you think of going paperless and why is this important, it's again split into like three main categories of why should you really care about this. You in IT, you might be excited about going to paperless because it really enables things. And when you're talking about it with your colleagues within the institution, whether it's someone from procurement that you need to help explain why do you want to invest more in Adobe in this, or getting leadership bought on, you're dealing with three really complex problems, which is how do you deal with new operating models? So hybrid workforces, remote access, contactless experiences, all these things that were brought on by the pandemic and kind of really fast forwarded things. And now we're in this environment where you have to deal with this, and paper just doesn't have any place in these kind of operating models. We have up-leveled experience expectations now that everything should be digital, everything should be seamless. There's such a high bar from the consumer point of view, consumer-grade digital interactions. So why should education be any different from that? Why should we be giving these old-fashioned way of filling out forms, handing a stack of paper for a student or a parent or guardian or an employee to be filling out? And then there's just more and more data, more documents, more things to track. So paperless is really more important than ever to really support these three different things. And these are three really important areas when you're, for example, looking to get buy-in within your organization of, I want to invest more in these tools and technology because it's going to help me, my teachers, my staff, and admins do a better job. So kind of going more into what you probably already have in the back of your mind of, need to get away from all these paper-based workflows, where looking at it, we've actually done again a little bit more research into this, and we found that within all the institutions we've interviewed, 80% of their document-based workflows still involve physical paper. So there's still this huge opportunity to move from paper to paperless, where you're moving away from this poor experience, security and compliance risks, complexities, and probably worst of all, it's manual and time-consuming, to a paperless workflow where it's automated, simple to manage, secure, quick, easy, accessible, just like this shows on the slide here. So tons of reasons to move to a paperless workflow world. And a lot of times you might be asked, okay, so how much is this going to cost me to do this? And what am I actually getting out of it other than providing a better experience? Well, it's actually really easy to measure the impact that you can get when you're in a paperless environment. So for this, we've partnered with Forrester Consulting to really measure the kind of impact you can get when you're moving away from paper to paperless. And some stats that we've seen repeated in a lot of our customers, and some do even better than this, is you get a 30% increase in transaction speed. So just think of how long does it take to get a document signed and filled out and executed. 30% faster at the minimum. Typically, it's a lot faster than that. You're getting a huge improvement in compliance and reduction in errors, just because a piece of paper, someone can fill out anything on any line. There's nothing really preventing them from putting in the wrong data on the wrong line. Obviously, in a digital workflow, if you're collecting someone's phone number or address, or you need a number instead of a sentence on a form, you can make sure that you're locking down that field to get exactly the type of information that you need. So that's going to reduce your errors, improve your compliance, and make it a lot easier to input that information into other systems. which is where the time savings and the money savings come in. So for every document that needs to be signed, you're seeing an average savings of an hour and a half of labor. So whose time do you want to waste with an hour and a half per document to get signed? And then you're also paying for that. You're paying for someone's time. You're paying for the paper, the ink, shipping costs to get documents signed. So a ton of savings across the board. So a lot of good reasons to invest in paperless technology and implement this throughout your institution. And then the good thing is, if you have a certain use case in mind, I really want to get rid of all the paper-based forms in one of my departments. Maybe that might be your initial initiative. This is really relevant for every institution, whether you're a K through 12 school or district, whether you're a college or university, and really every department you have, whether it's operations management, staff management, student-facing, alumni services. Everybody has forms. Everyone has paper that you need to get away from. So there's just so much opportunity to branch out within your institution and kind of introduce all these kind of savings, reduction of errors, and this better experience. So with all of that said, what we have here to really help with all those kind of opportunities is Acrobat Sign, which is our enterprise class e-signature solution that we're going to give a demo of. We're going to show how does that actually work and what kind of workflows can you build out. But when you think of the product itself, what it can do for you at the high level is prepare really any document for a signature. So it doesn't take much effort to take a paper document and get it into Acrobat Sign, to get that into a digital document that can be signed by others electronically. You can request signatures one-to-one. You can send it from one to many with a bulk send. You can automate a lot of that. And then of course, part of that process is you're tracking the documents. You can set reminders. So it makes it super simple, just as easy as sending an email, just as easy for the recipient of that to sign the document on any device. It works from really any device itself. So it can be a mobile, it can be in the web, it can be even within Acrobat on desktop if you have that installed on Acrobat. It really works across multiple surfaces. And then really most importantly is it works from your favorite applications you're probably already using. So we have super powerful integrations with nearly every enterprise application out there, especially Microsoft, which is where we're going to be doing a bit of our demo. But the key to making sure that people are really using this type of solution is making sure you put in the capabilities of getting an e-signature in the type of applications that your user base is already using. So whether that's Microsoft Teams, SharePoint, Workday, Salesforce, for example, so many different apps out there that we can integrate with. But specific for today's session, we're going to be talking a little bit about Acrobat Sign and Microsoft, just because we have such a deep integration with Microsoft, and we can integrate a lot of these workflow capabilities both into Microsoft's applications and then vice versa, pulling in Microsoft's capabilities into the Acrobat Sign app itself. When we think of Acrobat Sign and its integrations with Microsoft, as I mentioned, it's really across the board for nearly all of their apps that they have. So whether it's OneDrive, SharePoint, Power Apps, Power Automate, Word, PowerPoint, Outlook, Dynamics, we have a way to integrate this, and most of this is done out of the box with very little effort on your hand. And that's one of the reasons why Acrobat Sign is actually Microsoft's only preferred e-signature solution, where we're leveraging these enterprise-grade APIs that really help scalability and customization. A lot of this is pre-built, but then also you can use those APIs to integrate the e-signature component into any sort of in-house apps you might have as well, or any other apps that we don't have an out-of-the-box integration with. So a ton of flexibility there as well. And then one quick customer story here before we start to go into the actual live demo that I think is going to really put a lot of this into motion. One great example of using workflow automation and our Microsoft integration is Iowa State University. So if you're looking for like specific departments that have used this, so Iowa State, they have a huge alumni and kind of donation department where they reach out to others. Getting a donation from whether it's an alumni or someone that wants to donate funds to an institution, typically there's a lot of paperwork involved with that. So this experience was really improved by using e-signatures with Acrobat Sign and using SharePoint and just looking at the results. So Iowa State, they were able to get this entire process streamlined, where they were able to get the funds approved and transferred to where it needs to go, but 13 days faster than they were doing it before. They were able to save 30% of those operational costs because they don't have to deal with printing and shipping, and they were able to leverage their investments both in Microsoft and Adobe solutions. So just one really quick example of how you can implement this into a specific use case you might have that you're looking to make things a little bit better, save time and money with it, leverage what you're already using, what you've already invested in, and then branch out into additional use cases. And we have a lot of support and teams to really help you understand where else is this relevant in your institution and how can you get there. With that, a lot of kind of the preamble to kind of really talk about why is this so important, how can you talk about it internally in your institution if you're thinking of doing this. And then with that, I'm going to turn things over to my colleague Serge, who's going to actually show you what does this look like, how do you actually build a workflow using Acrobat Sign. So Serge, I'll pass this off to you and then take it over.
Thank you, Mike, and thanks everyone for joining our webinar today. So what I'd like to show you is how to take this document right here and use it as a workflow. So this is an example of an IEP meeting. And what I want to share with you today is how you can help your educators or anyone who have a specific workflow, making that really simple within Acrobat Sign. So here I am in Acrobat Sign, and what you're going to see down below is this link that says create a reusable workflow. So today, as Mike was talking about, I want to talk about workflows, and particularly two specific workflows. Before I jump into that, just to level set, a workflow is just a series of tasks that need to be completed from start to finish. And so what we're going to be referring to is a workflow in terms of an agreement that gets sent out to multiple individuals. And then once that agreement is signed and completed, we want to save that agreement to a SharePoint list. And I'll show you how you can do that in Sign as well as in Power Automate. So here, this is a feature that will be available early next year, the Microsoft Power Automate within Acrobat Sign. Before I jump into that, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to demonstrate how you can create a workflow. And in this case, this workflow is going to grab a couple of signatures and send that out in a manner that's very efficient. And so I'll come over here and I'll click on continue. And we're going to use the example of an IEP meeting. Now, for those who have ever been in IEP meetings, there are several individuals that are involved. And once that IEP meeting is completed, we want to send out an agreement of, what happened in the meeting and who actually signed. Now, I'm going to actually cheat for a second here. I have some information that I'm going to use to kind of copy and paste, but this will all make sense as I walk through it. So in a workflow, or in this case, in the Acrobat Workflow Designer, there are essentially, 6 different areas that complete a workflow. And this is something that can be reusable. And so think in terms of I'm the IT or I'm the administrator for Acrobat Sign, and I want to make life easier for my educators when they're in, for example, an IEP meeting when it comes to gathering signatures. This first step right here where it says workflow info, this is the name of the actual workflow that we're going to use. So I'm going to call this IEP workflow demo. So I'll go ahead and copy this information here, and we'll call this demo. And then the instructions for the sender, this is actually the use case or the actual information that needs to be completed when you're running this workflow. So I'm just going to copy this here, and I'm going to add it to this section here. So when I'm done building this workflow for my end users, when they log into Acrobat Sign and they're in an IEP meeting and it's getting ready to wrap up, I want to let them know what they need to do to gather those signatures. I don't want them to have to worry about finding the actual document and adding in the email addresses and so forth. I want to try and fulfill a lot of that work for them so they can stay more focused on the IEP meeting and other things that are of great importance to them. So the instructions right here where it says instructions to sender, what we're saying here is when you as the teacher is sending out this IEP, agreement, these are the instructions that you need to follow. And essentially, 3 things. We're going to enter in the parent or the guardian's email address because we want to send that IP agreement to them. We're going to have the teacher's email address already populated, or we can give the teacher the opportunity to add their own email address. And then we want to add the student's full name. So those are going to be the instructions that each user, each teacher would get when they're running this workflow. And again, I, as the administrator, I'm just setting this up for them once, and it can get reused as many times as possible by anyone within the organization. My next step is the actual agreement info. So what the agreement info is basically, what the recipients are going to see when they receive the actual agreement. And so we're going to type in, we'll call this IP agreement info, and then we will give it a message that everyone will see when they actually receive the agreement. And so in my demo, I'm just going to have a parent that's going to sign, and then the teacher will sign. Now, obviously, there's some other options available over here where I have some send options. If I want to password protect the actual document itself, if I want to add a completion deadline, these are some things that I can add. I can also CC other individuals that need to know about these IEP meetings. The third step are the recipients. So now, again, in this case, I'm just going to have 2 recipients. So I'll come over here and I'll click this plus sign. And what this does is it gives me an option of the types of recipients I can add in this routing. I just need another signer, but if I need an approver, an acceptor, and so forth, those are available to me. The first signer, I'm going to label this individual as the parent or guardian. And I'm going to keep the email blank because as you do IEP meetings, you're going to have to add different email addresses based on the individuals that are in that meeting. So I'll leave this blank. I'll click OK. The next signer is going to be the actual teacher. And so I will label this teacher. Then I want to do one thing that will save the teacher a little bit of a hassle. I'm going to check this box right here. And what this is going to do is this is going to automatically add the teacher's email, or in this case, the end user that has signed in an Acrobat Sign and is sending out this workflow to those that have participated in the meeting. And so this will automatically populate their email address. Trying to save some steps here. I'll go ahead and click OK. I have my recipient routing. Just if you wanted to see some cooler things, I can do things called parallel branches, where if I needed to add additional signers who have to sign at the same time, or where we send the agreement out to 2 individuals at the same time, we have that capability as well. But just to keep it simple, first it's going to go to the parent and guardian, then it's going to go to the teacher. This next step where it says emails, this is just notifications. So who do I want notified when when this agreement is in process? And so I'm going to leave it the way it is. I definitely want my sender to be notified when the agreement starts, when it's signed, or if it's canceled or declined. And then obviously I have my recipients. I want them to be notified, and those who are CC'd, or if I have anyone that has been delegated to sign. Next step is the document. So what I'm going to do really fast is I'm going to come over to my reusable template. And just to let you know how I got to this page, I'm going to come back to the home page. I'll come over to manage. And here I've already built some templates that I want to use. And this is the IEP meeting template that I was just looking at. So this template is very important because, again, this was the document that we were just looking at. So if you have some paper documents that you scanned in and you're ready to use it for an agreement, you can create a reusable template where this can get used over and over by anyone within your organization or by specific groups in your organization. You get to choose. So as the administrator, I'm setting this up for, my teachers. I have this document here, and I'm just putting in the student name. Then I want the full name of the parent and guardian to appear, as well as their signature and the date in which they signed. So that's going to be my first participant. Now, one thing I want to draw to your attention, and I'll do it twice. When I double click on this text field, this is just a common text field under the data fields section. and it's a text input. So if you have some custom fields that you need to add, you can easily just drag and drop those fields right onto the canvas, and then use it appropriately. In this case, I want the student's full name to appear here. So I've labeled this text field student name. And what I'm going to show you is how you can automate the student's name into this template. So let me come back to my workflow designer. The document that I want to use is this IEP agreement. So we'll call it IEP agreement. It's going to be a required document. And now I'm going to search in my document library where this template is. And so if I scroll down, here's the template. I will select that, click OK. Now I have the agreement tied to this workflow. So again, what I'm doing as an admin for my educators is I'm creating a signing ceremony. I'm setting up all the building blocks. So all the sender has to do is launch the workflow, add the email addresses and the student name, and click send. Last thing I want to add, right here where it says sender input fields, I'm going to add a field here. And I'm going to title this field student name. And then the document field name, what this represents is this field right here. So again, if I double click on this field and I copy this label, what I'm essentially doing is when the sender enters in the student's name, it's going to automatically populate this document right here, saving me some time. And then all I have to do is just review it, hit send, and I'm good to go. So now that I have the student name, I'll go ahead and click save. And then I'm going to activate this workflow. So now the workflow has been activated. The next thing I want to do is when my agreement is done, automatically we will save the copy of the agreement to our Acrobat servers. However, if there are business rules where you need to have a copy of that agreement stored like in a SharePoint directory, well, we can do that as well. So here I have my SharePoint site and I have this folder called Completed IEP Meetings. And this is where I want those complete agreements to land, right in this folder. And I can do that using Power Automate. Now, normally what I would do is I would launch Power Automate and I would build this flow where I'd say, save an agreement, automatic to SharePoint. But as I mentioned, coming next year, we now will embed Power Automate directly into Acrobat Sign. And so all I have to do now is click on Create a Reusable Workflow. You've seen the custom workflow. Now I'm going to launch the Power Automate workflow. So I'll click Continue, and I've already configured my account. And so my account is now tied to my Microsoft account. And here are some great templates that you can start to automate today. And so, for example, some of the common flows that we see our end users deploying is saving an agreement to SharePoint. So all I have to do now is hit select. And again, I'm still in Acrobat Sign. We've taken Power Automate and we've built it, we've put it into Sign here. And I can rename this flow if I want. So we'll call this Save Agreement to SharePoint. Something like that. You'll notice that I already have my credentials entered. So all I have to do is hit next. And now it's going to ask me some questions. It's going to say, okay, well, where do you want to save your agreement to? And what folder? So again, I've already identified the folder here. It's going to go into this completed IEP meetings folder. It's going to go onto this SharePoint site. So let me come back here and I'll select my SharePoint site and I will select the folder in which I want that agreement to live. And there it is, completed IEP meetings. And then down below, it's already added the action that I need to complete this flow. So all I'm doing is just picking and choosing where things are going to live. Not a lot of development work, if any. Then I'll go ahead and click on Create Flow. And so now what's happening is Acrobat Sign is now communicating with my Microsoft account and building this flow all in the back end. And so now here we have our flow. It's pretty much ready to go because it's an automated flow. So once I start the signing ceremony, which I'm about to do in the next few minutes, when that flow is complete, this flow, this Power Automate flow will then trigger, and then we'll get the actual document within the SharePoint site. So let me go ahead and come back to Acrobat Sign on the home page. I'm going to switch hats now. So now I'm going to play the role of the actual instructor or teacher. I'm in an IEP meeting. It's getting ready to wrap up, and I need to send out the agreement to the guardian, who was involved in this meeting. So I would log in, and then I would come over to Start from Library. And then in my library, I have all my workflows. So here's a workflow that I just created. I'll click Start. And then here's what it looks like for the end user. I'm going to click on this More link because these are the instructions that I, as the teacher, would basically read before I'm sending out the actual agreement. So it says, after each IEP meeting, send out the agreement to gather signatures of those that attended. So here I'm going to enter in the parent or guardian's email address. So down below under recipients, I'll go ahead and type in jimmylive@adobe.com. That was the parent that actually attended the agreement. And what you'll notice is that we are still including all the Acrobat Sign functionality within this tool. So if I want to have different levels of authentication, we can enable that. Just to make things simple, we're just using email. If I wanted to add a private message, I can add a private message. I'll say, hello, Jimmy. Thanks for joining. And only Jimmy will actually see this private message, right? The next step is I need to add the teacher's email. So you'll notice right here that it says myself. And that's because when I was building the workflow, I selected that checkbox that said, allow the sender to be the person that's going to receive this agreement. And so if I click on myself, it has the actual email address that's tied to this account. So I don't have to do much there. Let's say, for example, I needed a CC. I can still add a CC, but we're going to hide that for now. And here I have my document name, and then here I have my message. And if I wanted to, I can even personalize this. So I can put in my name, and then I can set my reminders if I need to. But what you'll notice is here I have the IEP agreement that's already set up. And then I have this field. So again, this field, if I were to type in the student's name, what's going to happen is once I click send, the agreement will be sent out, and then this field will get populated with Jenny Live. So everything looks good to go. I will go ahead and click on send. And now the agreement is being sent. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and actually show you what the signing ceremony looks like. So let me go ahead and go to my iPad here. And it looks like the agreement just came in. And so here it is. Here's the actual agreement. I'll go ahead and click on review and sign. And then you'll notice that private message down below. Hello, Jimmy, thanks for joining. So I'm going to go ahead and click on review and sign. And then this is going to open up in a web browser. Now, again, I'm using my iPad. You can do this on your mobile device if you wanted to, or on your desktop. And so here's the actual agreement itself. There's the student's name. If I feel like, oh, you know what? Yes, on paper, my daughter's name is Jenny, but she typically goes by Jen. I can just make changes here. Or if you want to lock this down so there are no changes made, I can go in and I can basically add restrictions to those text fields. And then down over here, it has my name, Jimmy Live, and then all I have to do is sign. So if I click on this, here I can type my name. It actually automatically populates it for me. I can draw it with my finger. If I have a wet image, if I have an image of my wet signature, I can upload it. Or I can use my mobile device by putting in my phone number, and then it'll come to my mobile device where I sign with my finger. I'm just going to click on type. I like the font. I'll click apply. I'm done. So now I just have to click on finish, and then I'll tap to sign. And that's all there is to it from the parent's perspective. Now I'm going to go back to the teacher's perspective. Signing can be done, again, via email notifications, or if I'm actually in Acrobat Sign, this is something that I commonly don't show, but I'd like to show it today. Over here in the Manage tab, this is where you can see documents that are in progress. So here are all the agreements that have been sent out that are in progress. But here's one that's waiting for me. So this is the one that I just sent out. And so I can come in here, I can open this agreement up, and it'll show me where it's, where it's at in the process. So notice that the name is now GenLive, and Jimmy has actually signed. And so now it's my turn to actually sign this agreement. And so over here where it says view and sign, I can click on this button, and it's going to take me to the signing ceremony process where I can finish my part as the teacher. So I'll go ahead and click on start, and then I'll go ahead and click to sign. And then there is, I'll clear this and I'll go ahead and put in my name. We'll click apply. You'll notice that my name updates here. I'll go ahead and click and sign. And that's all there is to it. So I can come right back to my Manage tab. I can come over to completed. And then here's the actual agreement. So I could, again, open up this agreement and it'll show me all the signatures. If I want to look at the audit report, I can do that. If I want to download the PDF, I can do that as well. But now that this is in Sign, I want to make sure this is actually on my SharePoint site. So we're going to jump over to SharePoint, and we're going to go inside this folder. And there it is. There's the IEP agreement. It made it just about a minute ago. And so it's in both places. If I were to go into my Power Automate flow, I can come in here, I'll refresh my screen, and this will show me the flow that was just created. So I can go in here if I was in Power Automate, and I can see that it was successful here. Or I can come back to Sign, and if I want to take a look at my flows within Sign, then I can come in and I can actually click on my workflows, and there's Power Automate. And then within my workflows, I can look at all of my the details of it. So for example, I can open this up and it'll show me the exact same screen that I was just at when I was in Power Automate. And so here I can look at the details of this flow. It ran successfully. That looks good. If I want to look at other information, I can click edit and make some changes to my flow. Again, what we're trying to do is we want to make the work more efficient and easier for you to do your job. And so in short, why are we showing this? Again, as I said, we want to make things efficient. This is a feature that's coming next year. And if you're interested, do let us know so we can get you on a trial to see how this works out within your organization. So with that said, that was the demo that I wanted to share. And I will go ahead and turn the time back over to Mike Prismet to wrap us up.
Great. Thanks, Serge. That was great. I see a ton of questions coming in the chat pod here, so we'll get to those very soon. Before getting in to the questions, just kind of next steps in terms of where can you get more resources about this and what's coming next. So have a couple good links here for you to check out to get more information. These links should be available in the chat pod shortly as well. We would love for you to kind of participate in this next session we have coming in January, kind of continuing on this trend of workflows. So I'm sure Serge will be back and talking about other workflows, probably more on the PDF side of things in terms of what can you do with PDFs to automate maybe the creation of a PDF, customizing it based on information you want to put in there. So a lot of cool information coming there. Now, before moving into the Q&A section here, where we're going to answer live, a lot of these questions came in. If you want to get more information directly from us, if you have any specific questions, if you want to get information on pricing or how can we help you integrate and implement this in your organization, drop your email address in the chat pod. Only we can see it. It's not something that everyone on the session can see. So drop in your name and email address and we will get to you as quick as possible. With that said, though, let's go into the list of questions here and see what we can answer in the about 15 minutes we have left for today's session. So one question I did see come up a couple times is what kind of account or software does the recipient, the person signing, do they need in order to sign this document? So Serge showed us a couple different ways to automate the process of getting a document, like as an example, the IEP sent out to different recipients. The good news is the recipient or the signer of a document, they actually don't need to have any software installed and they don't need to have any account set up. So they're able to sign the document on any device, whether it's a mobile, tablet, desktop, and they don't need to have any actual software installed. It's all done through the web browser within a few easy clicks that you saw Serge demonstrate there. And really, that's the beauty of an e-signature, that you're able to get things done so quickly. So that way your signer, whether it's someone internal to your institution, if you haven't deployed a license to them, or if it's a student, a parent, guardian, or someone else, it's really easy for them to access that link. They're emailed something and it's just a couple of clicks from there. Another question here, this one I'll turn over to Serge, and it's kind of a complex topic, but we'll see what we can answer. It's about importing a PDF into Acrobat Sign to get it signed. How does that play with Section 508 compliance? Because in the education space, this can be a big deal. Probably best to talk to us directly with that, but maybe Serge, if you have any high-level views on kind of 508 compliance.
Yeah, and that's something that I would say let's definitely take. So we have a lot of, we're compliant in a lot of areas, and what we'd want to do is understand more of those requirements. So it might be best to kind of do that one offline. There might be some specific requirements that we need to meet, but just to be rest assured, we are compliant in a lot of areas like 508 or 2001 CFR, but those are types of discussions that we would need to dive deeper on.
Great, perfect, absolutely. Next question here is, how do users within Acrobat Sign get access to these workflows? So for example, if an admin is the one setting it up, what's the method for other users within Acrobat Sign to actually execute these workflows? That one I'll give to you, Serge, as well.
Yeah, so when you are setting up Acrobat Sign, there's I would say there's essentially 3, maybe 4 different types of groups. You have your administrator group that has access to everything, and those administrators, this is where you need to understand, which groups are going to be using Sign and how deep they need to use it. As you're setting up your users, you can give them administrative access like you have, but you can do that from a group level. And that's probably what I would recommend, because you don't want to give them full access, but you can give them their own administrative access for their group. And then within that group, you can say, I only want users to have access to workflows. So what will show up on their screen when they log in is just workflows. If you want to give them access to send ad hoc agreements, then you can change the permissions within their account settings to allow them to send ad hoc agreements along with workflows. So we make it flexible to meet the needs that you have.
Perfect. I think I know the answer to this one here, but I'll have you kind of confirm the Serge. So can Acrobat Sign web forms be part of a workflow? So for those that are newer to Acrobat Sign, I know today's topic was more of an advanced topic and kind of killing 2 birds with 1 stone. I did see one question come in of if we can go over some basics. So we do have some recorded webinars talking about the basics of Acrobat Sign. We also have a ton of online documentation, and we'll definitely have that as a live topic sometime early next year. So this was more of an advanced one, but web forms is another way of getting people to sign a document where you post a signable document to the web, and then you just direct people to that link to sign it. That way you don't have to have their email address in advance. So I guess the question is, can we incorporate web forms into a workflow?
Yeah, you certainly can. Depending on what the workflow is, you can certainly incorporate a web form in a workflow. And in this case, I would probably be referring more on the Power Automate side. So you can certainly do that, and you can get very sophisticated, or you can be very simple. The web form itself is a workflow. So in terms of what other tasks that need to be involved, there are certain features of a web form that can actually satisfy some of those workflow requirements. So it all depends on what other tasks need to be completed as people are filling out that web form. And I put in the chat as well just a link to our YouTube channel where you can go and see some different demos and videos on how to do certain things like this. So be sure to check that out.
Yeah, great. Another one here this is a pretty common question, and one of the really great use cases of Power Automate is, can you have dependent kind of workflows, or in other terms, kind of conditional routing? For example, if you have maybe a PO that needs to be signed, and depending on the purchase price or the department, have intelligent routing to the right person to sign it, or add additional people to sign it based on the type of a purchase order it is, in which that can also be applied for other types of forms, not just POs. But maybe, Serge, I'll let you talk a little bit about that, like kind of conditional routing and things like that.
Yes, absolutely. So we do have the capability of doing conditional signatures as you leverage Power Automate. Really simple to set up. It's actually be one of our newer videos that we're going to put out on our channel. But in short, this is something where once you understand what the criteria is. So in this case, let's say it's a threshold of revenue on a PO. If it's over a certain amount of dollars, we need 2 signatures. If it's over or 3 or so forth. This is something that you would use in conjunction with Power Automate, where you would identify what the criteria is, and then based on that criteria, you would then send out the agreement right from Power Automate.
Awesome. Thanks for that answer there. Another less kind of technical question, but more of kind of an implementation question that, Serge, I don't know how much experience you have post-purchase for this, but one interesting question is, what challenges have we seen with organizations that they move from paper to electronic? Like, what are the big obstacles that they have when they go down this journey? So I don't know if you've been through that, where you've helped customers kind of go through this, Serge, or if you have any stories to tell about that.
I think it'd be more on scanning their documents, getting the documents digitized, because there's paper in so many different places. You'd be surprised where, this group and this department have a box of agreements or contracts that need to be digitized. And so I think really it's more gathering, all the sources of documents that need to be digitized. And then secondly, getting people used to, electronic signature. It is, it's legal, it's efficient, it's a new way of doing business for some. And so I think it's just more of that organizational mindset, moving away from paper to electronic. That's typically the hang up, but everything a part of that or downstream, very seamless, very straightforward.
Yep, that would be kind of my experience in this anecdotally as well. I know another challenge a lot of times, and this is something that we want to definitely give as much support as we can, is a lot of our customers, they have a handful of use cases in mind, like, hey, I want to eliminate paper purchase orders, or I want to eliminate the paper forms for employee onboarding documentation. And then the challenge is, how do we get more departments within my institution to be using this, because we had such great results? Because a lot of times you need to find kind of champions within different departments and something we can definitely help out with. And we have a lot of materials, because the more organizations, the more departments using this within your school or university or district wide, the better results you're getting. And then especially a lot of you as kind of those in IT that are really managing this, it's obviously showing how you're looking to transform the organization. So just kind of bonus points for you as well. Another question came in here, kind of an interesting one. I'll kind of simplify the question. It's almost, how do I chain multiple signed documents together, where if I need one document signed and executed, and then I need to upload that signed document to kick off kind of another flow, is that something we can create a workflow around? Like, for example, I need to sign a purchase order and get the confirmation number from that, and then apply that confirmation number into a new form to get final approval.
That's a great that's a great use case. And so right off the top of my head, what we would need to do is we need to export some of that data. And so one thing that Sign can do is, when you have, so for example, the form field that I showed where I was entering the student's name, we capture all that data and we can export that as a CSV, or in Power Automate, there's a way where you can export that data as a JSON file, where you can parse that JSON file and get the pieces of information needed. And then from there, kick off another workflow when you have, for example, a piece of information that would start a new workflow. So that would be something that would be done with Sign as well. And I would probably recommend using Power Automate to grab the data and then send that data to kick off another flow for another agreement. So definitely doable. If you'd like to, go more into the weeds, send us a note. Contact your account manager and have them contact one of our solution consultants, where we can help you build that.
Awesome. Thanks for that. I think we probably have time for 2 more questions or so. So here's, I think, the more recent questions, that a super important one is, how can you secure the signature to make sure that the person signing is the intended recipient? So what kind of signer authentication and things like that do we have in mind? So obviously this is a huge component of Acrobat Sign, but I'll let you kind of answer that one, Serge.
Oh yeah, so this is your authentication. So anytime, so in the demo, I just showed email authentication, but we do have additional levels of authentication. You can do password, you can do KBA, which stands for knowledge-based authentication. That's probably the one that I would recommend, because you don't have to manage the password. Knowledge-based authentication basically prompts the user to enter in, once they get the agreement via email, before they jump into the agreement, the user will be prompted to enter in their full name, their address, and optionally the last 4 digits of their social security. And then based on that information, they'll be sent challenge questions that only they would know, in terms of, okay, did you live on this street when you lived in California 5 years ago? And only that user would know that. So those are different ways of ensuring that the person that signed the agreement is who they say they are.
Perfect. Last question for you, Serge. Then I got one more question I'll take for myself. But question for you is, so we showed workflow with Microsoft's Power Automate. Is there a way to combine workflow with other integrations, like, for example, OnBase, to kind of archive files? And if not that specifically, just how else can you combine workflows with other integrations that we have, or using APIs?
And it's what you mentioned. So if we don't have a pre-built integration, either via Power Automate or another low-code, no-code solution, then we have our REST APIs, where we can go directly and call the API and have it communicate with other applications like OnBase or whatnot. So if it's not pre-built, then we have the APIs, which gives you more control and flexibility on how you want the API and the behavior to function.
Yep, perfect. So last question, and always a question we like to see, is we want more of you kind of investing in Acrobat Sign, is, what does pricing look like? So it's a lot of flexible ways. I'm not going to go over the actual number, but we have education specific pricing for Acrobat Sign, and the way that we price it is there's two ways. Typically, the easiest way on an organization is what we call transaction pricing, where you estimate how many transactions, or in other terms, how many documents do you need signed per year or per multiple years if you're looking at a multiple year agreement. And then we price it based on the amount of transactions. And we can also do it based on the amount of specific users you want to deploy this to within your organization. So a lot of flexibility, and a lot of flexibility in terms of how do we price it, and then flexibility in terms of what is that price, because especially in education, we know budgets are super tight, and we definitely have education friendly pricing. So drop in your email address and contact details into the chat pod here, or reach out to your Adobe rep if you already have one, and we'll be more than happy to discuss those things with you. With that, I'm going to wrap things up, turning it back over to Phil to kind of close out today's session. And definitely appreciate everybody joining today. This was a great interactive chat session here. So Phil, hand this to you, and we'll see you all next month in the new year.